The conference room felt ice cold as I walked in. David Chen sat at the head of the table, his face stone cold. No smile, no greeting, just silence that made my stomach drop. "Rebecca, please sit," he said without looking up from his papers. After 15 years as senior marketing director, I knew every mood David had. This wasn't good. "We're making some budget cuts," he began, his voice robotic. "Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. 15 years. 15 years of late nights, weekend campaigns, building this company from nothing. My mouth went dry. "David, I don't understand. We just had our best quarter ever. The Smart Home Connect campaign alone brought in..." "Security will escort you out in 10 minutes, he interrupted, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "Your final paycheck and severance are inside." I stared at the envelope, my hands shaking. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not after everything I'd given this company. "Pack your personal items only," David said, finally meeting my eyes. There was something there? Guilt, maybe? Or fear? I stood up on wobbly legs, clutching the envelope. 15 years, David, that's all you have to say?" He looked away. "I'm sorry, Rebecca, it's just business." 3 days later, I sat in my kitchen, still in my pajamas, staring at my laptop screen. The job boards blurred together. 55 years old, with 15 years at one company. Who would hire me now? My phone buzzed. Sarah, my former assistant. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry about everything," she whispered. "I shouldn't be calling, but I had to tell you something." My heart raced. "What is it?" "It's about why you were really fired," she said, her voice barely audible. "David hired someone new. Marina something. She's his girlfriend, Rebecca. 28, no marketing experience. They're paying her twice what you made." The phone slipped from my hand. Girlfriend? I knew David was divorced, but this? My mind raced back to recent meetings. Had I seen her around the office? "Sarah, are you sure?" "She started the day after you left. HR's calling her the new creative director. Everyone's talking about it. I'm sorry, Rebecca. You deserved better." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. 15 years of loyalty, and he fired me for a girlfriend half my age. My hands clenched into fists. The unfairness burned in my chest like acid. I walked to my home office and started throwing my work files into boxes. Time to move on. But as I lifted my filing cabinet, something caught my eye. A thick folder marked 2018 contracts. The folder was dusty, forgotten in the back of my drawer. I pulled it out and flipped through old NDAs, vendor agreements, and employee handbooks. Then I saw it. A contract I'd completely forgotten about. Key person insurance agreement, the header read. My name was at the top, dated during the company's near bankruptcy in 2018. I remembered that terrible year when we almost lost everything. David had begged me to stay when 3 competitors tried to poach me. The company was bleeding money, and he couldn't afford to lose me. So he offered something unusual, a special contract that protected both of us. I read through the legal jargon, my coffee growing cold. Most of it was standard stuff about staying with the company, maintaining confidentiality. But then I reached page 4. My heart stopped. In the event of termination without cause, employees shall retain ownership of 15% of all intellectual property created during employment, including but not limited to marketing campaigns, brand strategies, and client relationships, plus ongoing royalties from said properties. I read it again. And again. Smart Home Connect. The campaign that was now bringing in millions. The campaign I had created, every piece of it. Every slogan, every strategy, every client relationship. And according to this contract, 15% of it was mine. I grabbed my laptop and started researching. Smart Home Connect had exploded since I left. The campaign I built was now licensing to companies worldwide. Just last month, they'd announced a $50 million expansion deal. 15% of $50 million. $7.5 million. My hands trembled as I called Jennifer Walsh, the best employment lawyer in the city. We'd met at a networking event years ago. "Jennifer, I need to see you immediately. I think I have a case." 2 hours later, I sat in her glass office overlooking downtown. She read through my contract twice, her eyebrows raising higher each time. "Rebecca, this is ironclad. They owe you big time." She flipped to the back page. "But there's something important here. You have 90 days from termination to file your claim." My stomach dropped. It's been a month already. That gives us 60 days. We need to move fast. She leaned forward. But I have to warn you, when we file this, David's gonna fight back hard. Are you ready for that? I thought about Marina sitting in my old office, earning twice my salary with zero experience. I thought about David's cold dismissal after 15 years of loyalty. I'm ready. While Jennifer prepared the paperwork, I hired a private investigator named Tom Rodriguez. If David wanted to play dirty, I needed to know everything. Tom called me 3 days later. You're not going to believe this, Rebecca. Marina Rodriguez, no relation by the way, was a yoga instructor 6 months ago. Zero marketing experience. Zero business experience. She taught hot yoga in strip malls. How did she even get the job? Well, she's been dating your boss for 8 months. Started as his personal trainer, if you know what I mean. The pieces clicked together. All those client dinners David had been taking. The suddenly locked office door during lunch breaks. The way he'd been distracted during important meetings. There's more, Tom continued. I looked into the company's finances. That Smart Home Connect deal you created, it's bigger than they're saying publicly. We're talking $200 million over 5 years, not 50. My head spun. 15% of $200 million was $30 million. Tom, are you certain about these numbers? I have copies of the contracts. David's been downplaying the deal size, probably for tax reasons, but the real numbers are all there in the client filings. $30 million. For work I had already done. Work they stole from me to make room for David's girlfriend. Game on. Jennifer's office buzzed with activity. Paralegals rushed around with documents while she barked orders into her phone. When she hung up, her face was grim. Rebecca, they found your contract. David's lawyer just called me, screaming about frivolous lawsuits. My heart sank. Does that hurt our case? Actually, it helps. It means they're scared. She pulled out a thick file. But we have a problem. The company's cash flow can't handle a $30 million payout. My sources say David's already talking to bankruptcy lawyers. Can he do that? Just declare bankruptcy to avoid paying me? If the company goes bankrupt, your contract becomes worthless. You'd be just another creditor in line. Jennifer stood up and paced. But here's the thing. If we can prove the firing was discriminatory or fraudulent, David becomes personally liable. That means his personal assets are on the table. I leaned forward. What kind of proof do we need? Evidence that the firing was pretextual. That it wasn't really about budget cuts. She smiled. Lucky for us, hiring his girlfriend at twice your salary right after firing you is pretty good evidence. So what's our next move? We file the claim tomorrow, then we see how desperate David gets. She handed me a thick stack of papers. Sign these, and Rebecca? Once we file, there's no going back. David's gonna come at you with everything he's got. I thought about my empty house, my dwindling savings, my uncertain future. Then I thought about Marina in my office, earning my salary for my work. I signed every page. The call came at 6 a.m. Jennifer's voice was tight with excitement. Rebecca, you need to get down here now. David's lawyer wants to meet. I threw on clothes and raced downtown. In Jennifer's conference room, a nervous man in an expensive suit sat across from us. David's lawyer, Marcus Stone, looked like he hadn't slept. My client is prepared to offer Miss Hayes her position back at double her previous salary, he began without preamble. Jennifer laughed. That's not how this works, Marcus. She's owed $30 million under a valid contract. The contract was signed under duress during a financial crisis. The contract was negotiated by both parties with full legal representation, Jennifer shot back. Your client is going to pay, or we're going to court. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Look, off the record, the company can't absorb this hit. David's already liquidating personal assets. If you push this, everyone loses their jobs. I felt a stab of guilt. 47 employees worked at that company, good people who had nothing to do with David's mess. But then I remembered his cold dismissal. The way he'd humiliated me, the girlfriend earning twice my salary. That's David's problem, I said quietly. He should have thought about his employees before he fired me for his girlfriend. Marcus packed up his briefcase. We'll see you in court. After he left, Jennifer grinned. He's scared. Really scared. That afternoon, I was grocery shopping when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned to see Marcus Webb, David's former business partner. Marcus had been pushed out 3 years ago in what David called a strategic restructuring. Rebecca, I heard about your situation. Buy you a coffee? We sat in the store's cafe, and Marcus leaned forward conspiratorially. David's in deep trouble, deeper than just your contract. What do you mean? I've been watching that company since he forced me out. The books don't add up, Rebecca. Revenue that disappears, expenses that don't exist. I think David's been cooking the numbers for years. My pulse quickened. Do you have proof? Some, but I need more access. Marcus smiled. Here's what I'm thinking. You help me get the evidence we need to bring David down properly, and I'll help you get way more than 30 million. How? If we can prove fraud, we can force a hostile takeover. You take control of the company, David goes to prison, and justice gets served. He extended his hand. Partners? I thought about all the employees who would lose their jobs if the company went bankrupt. If we could save the company and remove David. Partners, I said, shaking his hand. While Marcus worked his contacts, I focused on Marina. Tom's surveillance showed she was making disastrous decisions. 2 major clients had already jumped ship after she bungled their campaigns. Sarah texted me updates throughout the day. Marina blamed the previous team's poor foundation in the client meeting. Everyone rolled their eyes. Then came the breakthrough I'd been hoping for. Sarah called during her lunch break, whispering frantically. Rebecca, Marina just had a total meltdown in the break room. She was on the phone with someone, screaming about how she never wanted this job, how David forced her into it. Did anyone else hear? Half the office. But Rebecca, that's not the best part. Sarah's voice dropped even lower. She said David promised her they'd get rid of that old witch and she could just coast until they sold the company. Sarah, please tell me you recorded that. I did. My husband just got laid off, and we need money. There are whistleblower rewards for this kind of thing, right? My heart pounded. Sarah, you might have just saved my case. Send it to me immediately. And Sarah? Start looking for a new job. When this hits, David's going to clean house. That evening, I played the recording for Jennifer. Marina's voice was crystal clear. David said we just had to get rid of Rebecca, and I could basically do whatever. He said she was too old anyway, that clients wanted someone younger and prettier. Jennifer's eyes lit up. Age discrimination, sex discrimination, wrongful termination. Rebecca, this recording is worth more than your contract. Tom's next report made everything click into place. He'd followed Marina to 3 different bars, where she bragged to anyone who'd listen about stealing some old lady's job. But the real bombshell came from Marcus. He'd been digging through public filings and found discrepancies in the company's tax reports versus their client contracts. David's been skimming, Marcus explained over dinner. Look at these numbers. He reports 50 million to the IRS but bills clients for 80 million. Where's the extra 30 million going? I studied the spreadsheets. Offshore accounts? Has to be. And if we can prove it, David faces federal fraud charges. Marcus leaned back. Here's my plan. We approach the FBI with what we have. They investigate, find the hidden money, and David goes to prison. Meanwhile, we use your contract claim to force a company sale. What about the employees? We save their jobs by taking over properly. Clean house at the top, keep everyone else. Marcus smiled. You become CEO of a company worth 200 million instead of just collecting 30 million and walking away. It was tempting, really tempting. But something nagged at me. Marcus, if we go to the FBI, there's no guarantee I get anything. Federal investigations can freeze assets for years. True, but David goes to prison, which has to count for something. I stared at the evidence spread across the table. In 60 days, I could be $30 million richer. Or I could gamble everything on a federal case that might take years. Let me think about it. The next morning, my phone rang. David's voice was shaky, desperate. Rebecca, we need to talk. Can you come in today? I don't think that's appropriate, David. Anything you want to say can go through my lawyer. Please, just give me 10 minutes. I want to make this right. Against Jennifer's advice, I agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown. David looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes, nervous energy. Rebecca, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. He leaned across the small table. I want to offer you your job back. Senior Vice President of Marketing. 3 times your old salary. Why? Because you were right. Marina's a disaster. We've lost 4 clients this month alone. The board is asking questions. His hands shook as he lifted his coffee cup. I need you back. I kept my voice level. And Marina, she'll be relocated to a different department, so you can keep sleeping with her while I fix your mess? David's face flushed. It's not like that. David, you fired me after 15 years to make room in the budget for your girlfriend. Now you want me to clean up her mistakes? I stood up. The answer is no. Rebecca, please. If you don't come back, the company might not survive. I looked down at this man who had once been my mentor, my friend. You should have thought of that before you chose her over 15 years of loyalty. As I walked away, David called after me. I was wrong to fire you, Rebecca. I admit it. Can't we work something out? I didn't turn around, but I did pull out my phone and start recording. Jennifer was ecstatic when I played David's admission. He just confessed to wrongful termination. This case is over, Rebecca. But Marcus had bigger news. The FBI is interested, really interested. Agent Sarah Martinez wants to meet with us tomorrow. That evening I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, I had to choose between $30 million now or potentially hundreds of millions later. But also the chance that David might slither away from it all. I called my sister in Portland. Linda, I need advice. What's going on, Becca? I told her everything. The firing, the contract, the fraud evidence, all of it. When I finished, Linda was quiet for a long time. Becca, how many people work at that company? 47. And if David declares bankruptcy, they all lose their jobs? Probably. But if you work with the FBI and take over the company, you could save those jobs? I hadn't thought of it that way. I guess so. Sounds like you already know what the right thing to do is. She was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. Agent Martinez was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. We met in a sterile federal building conference room. Miss Hayes, Mr. Webb has shown us some interesting documents. We'd like to hear your story. I told her everything. The firing, Marina, the contract, David's desperate phone calls. Agent Martinez took notes but didn't react. Miss Hayes, if we open an investigation, your civil case gets complicated. Any assets we seize would be frozen pending criminal proceedings. My heart sank. For how long? Could be years. But if Mr. Chen is convicted, you'd likely recover far more than your contract allows. Marcus jumped in. Agent Martinez, what about a simultaneous approach? Civil action to force immediate change in company leadership while federal investigation proceeds. Possible, but risky. She looked directly at me. Miss Hayes, you need to understand. Once we start this, there's no controlling where it goes. Your old boss could face 20 years in prison. I thought about David's cold dismissal, his smug face as security escorted me out. Then I thought about the 47 employees who had nothing to do with his crimes. Agent Martinez, if I help you, can you guarantee those employees keep their jobs? I can't guarantee anything, but companies that cooperate fully in federal investigations tend to fare better. I looked at Marcus, then back at Agent Martinez. What do you need from me? The FBI moved fast. Within a week, Agent Martinez had enough evidence to get warrants for David's financial records, but she needed someone on the inside to help build the case. Miss Hayes, we'd like you to wear a wire for your next conversation with Mr. Chen. My blood went cold. You want me to trick him into confessing? We want you to give him the opportunity to tell the truth. Agent Martinez corrected. He's already admitted wrongful termination. If he admits to financial irregularities, it strengthens both our cases. That night, I met with Jennifer to discuss strategy. Rebecca, the FBI route is dangerous. If something goes wrong, you could end up with nothing. But if it works, I save the company and those jobs. And if David figures out what you're doing? I didn't want to think about that. David desperate was bad enough. David cornered might be dangerous. The next day, Marcus called with urgent news. Rebecca, David's planning to file for bankruptcy next week. If we don't move now, the company's gone. I made my decision. Set up the meeting with David. I'll wear the wire. Rebecca, are you sure? I thought about Sarah, about the other employees who'd been nothing but kind to me over the years. They didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of David's greed. I'm sure. The wire was smaller than I expected, barely visible under my blouse. Agent Martinez tested it twice before I left for the meeting. Miss Hayes, just have a normal conversation. Don't push too hard for admissions. Let Mr. Chen talk. David had chosen a private dining room at an upscale restaurant. When I arrived, he was already there, looking worse than ever. The confident CEO I'd known was gone, replaced by a desperate man clinging to power. Rebecca, thank you for coming. I know you don't owe me anything. You're right, I don't. I've been thinking about your contract. Maybe we can work out a deal. David leaned forward. What if I gave you 49% of the company? You'd be my partner, not my employee. My pulse quickened. On tape, David was offering me nearly half his company. Why would you do that? Because I need someone I can trust. Someone who knows where the bodies are buried. He laughed nervously. Figuratively speaking, of course. David, I know about the offshore accounts. His face went white. What offshore accounts? The $30 million you've been skimming from client contracts. The money that doesn't appear on your tax returns. David's hands shook as he reached for his water glass. Rebecca, I don't know what you're talking about. The FBI does. The glass slipped from his hands, crashing to the floor. You went to the FBI? They came to me, David. Apparently when you steal millions of dollars, people notice. David stood up abruptly. This meeting is over. Sit down, David. We're not finished. David sat back down, his face pale and sweaty. Rebecca, whatever you think you know, I know everything, the fake expenses, the hidden revenue, the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I kept my voice steady, remembering Agent Martinez's coaching. I know you've been defrauding clients and the government for 3 years. You can't prove any of that. The FBI can. They have your bank records, David, all of them. David buried his face in his hands. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The company was struggling, and I borrowed a little to keep us afloat. $30 million isn't a little, David. It snowballed. One client overpayment led to another, and suddenly I was in too deep. He looked up at me with desperate eyes. Rebecca, if this comes out, everyone loses their jobs. 47 people. That's why I'm here. I want to make a deal. David straightened up. What kind of deal? You transfer 60% of the company to me. I become CEO, you step down to consultant. In exchange, I don't press criminal charges, and we work out a payment plan for what you stole. And if I say no, the FBI raids your office tomorrow morning. By noon, you're in federal custody, facing 20 years for wire fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. David stared at me for a long moment. You've changed, Rebecca. You fired me for a yoga instructor, David. What did you expect? He sighed deeply. I need time to think. You have until 9 tomorrow morning. After that, the decision gets made for you. David called at 8:30 the next morning. I'll do it. I'll sign over the company. Agent Martinez was listening on speakerphone. Mr. Chen, are you also prepared to cooperate with our ongoing investigation? What choice do I have? We met at Jennifer's office that afternoon. David looked broken, a shell of the confident man who had fired me 6 weeks ago. The papers were ready. Transfer of ownership, resignation as CEO, cooperation agreement with the FBI. As David signed each page, I felt triumph mixed with sadness. This man had been my mentor once. Now he was signing away his life's work because of greed. Rebecca, David said as he signed the final page, I'm sorry for all of it. You deserved better. I nodded. Yes, I did. After everyone left, I stared at the papers that made me CEO of a $200 million company. 6 weeks ago, I'd been fired and humiliated. Now I owned the company that had discarded me. Jennifer poured champagne. How does it feel, CEO Hayes? I thought about Marina, completely unaware her world was about to change. It feels like justice. My first day as CEO was everything I dreamed of. I walked into the office at 8 a.m. sharp, wearing my best power suit. The receptionist did a double take. Miss Hayes? I thought you were... I'm back. Is Marina Rodriguez in yet? She usually comes in around 10. Ask her to see me in the conference room at 10:15 and send an email to all staff. Mandatory meeting at 11. At 10:15, Marina sauntered in wearing yoga pants and a crop top. David said you wanted to see me? What's this about? I slid a folder across the table. Your termination paperwork, effective immediately. Marina's face showed confusion, then anger. You can't fire me. David hired me. Actually, I own this company now. David signed it over yesterday. I stood up. You have 30 minutes to clean out your desk. This is insane. David will never allow this. David is cooperating with a federal investigation. He's not in position to allow anything. As security escorted a sobbing Marina out, I felt 15 years of loyalty finally being rewarded. The 11 o'clock meeting was electric. All 47 employees packed the conference room, buzzing with confusion. I walked in, and the room fell silent. "Good morning. I'm sure you're wondering what's happening." I looked at faces I'd known for years: Sarah, Jim from accounting, Lisa from design. As of yesterday, I am the new CEO. David Chen has resigned and will be cooperating with a federal investigation to financial irregularities. Gasps filled the room. I held up my hand. "Your jobs are safe. In fact, as my first official act, everyone is getting a 10% raise, effective immediately." The room erupted in applause and cheers. Sarah wiped away tears. "We're implementing new policies to ensure this company treats employees with respect, and we're continuing campaigns like Smart Home Connect, which I created." More applause. Lisa raised her hand. "What about Marina?" "Marina is no longer with the company." Spontaneous applause burst out. Apparently Marina hadn't been popular. "Let's get back to work. We have a company to run." That afternoon, my phone exploded with angry voicemails from Marina, each one more unhinged than the last. "You think you're so smart, you old bitch. You ruined my life." I saved each voicemail and forwarded them to Jennifer. By 5 o'clock, Marina was pounding on my office door, screaming at my assistant, "I want to see Rebecca now." I called security, but Marina pushed past them into my office. Her makeup was smeared, clothes disheveled. She looked like she hadn't slept. "You destroyed my relationship. David won't take my calls because of you." "Marina, you need to leave. Now." I had everything: a career, a man who loved me. She grabbed a coffee mug and hurled it at the wall. "You took it all away." Security restrained her as she continued screaming threats. "This isn't over, Rebecca. I'll make you pay." I recorded everything on my phone. The next morning, Jennifer filed for a restraining order. By noon, we had a temporary order. Marina's unhinged behavior was now documented evidence of harassment. The restraining order hearing was a spectacle. Marina showed up wearing a wedding dress, apparently bought for her imaginary wedding to David. She represented herself and ranted about how I'd stolen her man and career. The judge listened patiently, then reviewed the evidence: threatening voicemails, security footage, witness statements from employees. "Miss Rodriguez, your behavior clearly poses a threat to Ms. Hayes. I'm granting a permanent restraining order. You are to have no contact with Ms. Hayes or her business." Marina started crying. "She ruined my life. Someone has to pay." "Someone didn't pay, Miss Rodriguez. Mr. Chen paid by losing his company. You paid by losing your job. The only person who didn't pay was the person who deserved justice, Miss Hayes." Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. The business press had caught wind of the story. "Miss Hayes, how does it feel to go from fired employee to CEO in 6 weeks?" I smiled for the cameras. "It feels like contracts matter. It feels like loyalty should be rewarded. And it feels like justice, even when it takes 15 years. 3 months later, the company was thriving. We'd won back lost clients, signed new accounts, and expanded Smart Home Connect internationally. David was working at his brother's hardware store, living in his mother's basement. Marina couldn't get hired anywhere and was serving tables at a chain restaurant. My biggest triumph came when European investors reached out. They wanted to partner specifically because of our leadership integrity. The deal was worth $300 million over 5 years. When we signed in London, the press coverage was international. I was featured on magazine covers and interviewed by CNN. "Ms. Hayes, what advice do you have for executives facing age discrimination?" Document everything, read your contracts, and never underestimate the power of doing excellent work, even when no one seems to notice. The company was now valued at over $400 million. Smart Home Connect had become the industry standard, licensing worldwide. I felt no sympathy for David or Marina. They'd made their choices and were living with the consequences. Sometimes justice takes time, but it always arrives. A year later, David filed for personal bankruptcy. I didn't attend the creditors' meeting, but Tom reported back. David looked broken. The FBI had seized his offshore accounts, his house, cars, boat, all sold to pay back taxes and penalties. "He asked about you," Tom said. "Wanted to know if you'd consider hiring him as a consultant." "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were too busy running a $500 million company." It was true. We were now valued at over 500 million. Smart Home Connect had become the industry standard, licensing worldwide. Marina's story was pathetic. She'd tried writing a tell-all book, but no publisher wanted it. Her social media was full of bitter rants about old women who refused to step aside. I felt no sympathy for either of them. They'd chosen their path, firing a loyal employee for a yoga instructor girlfriend, stealing credit for work they didn't create, living off fraud and nepotism. Now they were both living paycheck to paycheck, while I ran an empire built on the ashes of their arrogance. The CEO of the Year awards came from Forbes, Fortune, and Business Weekly. My acceptance speech was watched by 50 million people online. 2 years ago, I was fired after 15 years of loyal service. My boss chose his 28-year-old girlfriend over my experience. Today, I run a company worth $500 million. Standing ovation. But this isn't a revenge story. It's about preparation meeting opportunity. It's about reading the fine print. It's about never giving up on yourself. I paused, looking at the audience. Tonight, I'm announcing the Hayes Foundation, dedicated to helping women over 40 re-enter the workforce after age discrimination. Everyone deserves a second chapter. Thunderous applause. Jennifer wiped away tears. Marcus gave me a thumbs up. After the event, a young reporter approached me. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if David hadn't fired you?" I smiled. If David hadn't fired me, I'd still be making someone else rich with my ideas. Sometimes the worst thing that happens becomes the best thing that ever happened. Today, writing from my corner office, I keep that original contract framed on my wall. Not the stock certificates worth hundreds of millions, not the CEO awards, not the magazine covers, just that dusty contract I almost threw away. The plaque reads, "The best revenge is building an empire from the ashes of those who underestimated you." David works at his brother's hardware store, helping customers pick screws and paint. Marina moved back home and teaches yoga again, but her classes are mostly empty. Our company employs over 300 people across 4 countries. Smart Home Connect generates over $1 billion annually. My 15% stake, originally worth $30 million, is now worth more than I dreamed. But the real victory isn't the money. It's the culture we built. No employee gets fired for a boss's girlfriend. No loyalty gets rewarded with humiliation. The Hayes Foundation has helped over 5,000 women restart careers after discrimination. Sarah runs our HR department. Marcus serves as CFO. Sometimes justice takes 15 years. Sometimes it comes disguised as your worst day. But when it arrives, it's sweeter than any revenge you could plan. The contract they forgot about changed everything.